Welcome to another CEO Wisdom Pod. We have JM Ryerson with us. He's elevating dental practices, helping them double revenue and building operational excellence with their core business and leadership principles, which is quite interesting niche. That is, he's CEO at Let's Go Win, has been doing that since the past 5 years and has occupied various leadership positions, has been a business owner since almost 25 years now. So that's quite impressive. We're going to talk about his businesses and what he's up to. He's got a couple of books as well. So it's going to be a fun one, folks. This podcast presented to you by podpire.com. Podpire is my podcasting company. If you want to start, scale, be invited to podcasts like this one, you can go to podpire.com. We help you bring the dollars to podcasting, monetize podcasting. It's also brought to you by our friends at Neurohacker. If you want to hack your brain, pop a couple of supplements for energy, focus, you can go to neurohacker.com/CO wisdom. JM, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Hey, Charles, thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it. Let me see. I've built and sold 3 businesses prior to starting Let's Go Win in the financial service world, but I don't know anything about financial services, man. I never did. I know what I'm good at. I'm good at sales, leadership, and building teams. And so that's what I did over there at the other companies. But what happened is I wrote my first book, and I wrote it for my wife and I have 2 sons, called Let's Go Win. And the book took me on what the journey is today, which is inspiring people to live their best lives. So as you mentioned, I work with dentists as part of the niche, but really small businesses to help them double their revenue. So it's pretty cool, man, because I get to help them double their revenue, and that's a win for them. I get a small piece of equity, win for me, and it's creates this win-win, which is really cool because they're happy, their business is thriving. I'm happy because I'm doing what I'm good at, what I love. And it's just been a cool ride, man. It's been interesting navigating through the coaching world to where I landed on now, which is just go do what you love doing. And so that's what I do, man. It's a lot of fun.
So, what was your top goal when you were 20? And do you feel that you've accomplished that a couple of decades later?
Well, at 20, I was going to be in the NBA. So, no, I did not accomplish that goal. After 3 knee surgeries, kind of that goal went by the wayside. Who knows if it would have happened anyway. But, it's interesting. You asked the age of 20. I actually wrote about Let's Go Win in a journal when I was about 20 or 21 years old. I'd forgotten about it. And so years later, we're moving from California to Florida, and my wife asked me to clean out the garage. I'm going through and I see this journal with Let's Go Win, has the same logo in black and white because it was just, I was journaling. And I had written the book. So for 15, 16, 17 years, I marinated on this idea, totally forgot about it. And yet I had thought about this when I was a young guy in college, and then to actually bring it to fruition. So it's cool to know that it was back there at some point. I just had forgotten about it.
Right. And I see that you post a lot of references about pro athletes. I posted on my LinkedIn yesterday that all the top CEOs and founders that I talk to, they bring the competitive athlete mentality to the business world. Tell us a bit more about that.
I mean, I grew up playing every sport there is, besides hockey, I guess would be the one I never really played. But, I love to compete. I even still today, after, numerous injuries and all that, I still love to compete. So in the business world, I guess what's interesting about the name of my company is it's called Let's Go Win, right? But if you really look at it, it is let's, you and I, it's not JM Go Win, it's Let's Go Win. So when we're competing, we're actually rising all of our levels. And I think it's just something that when businesses have an abundance mindset and they can bring that competitive spirit, it's not you against me. It's literally let's rise, the tide, all the boats will rise together is kind of the idea. So I love to compete. I love the idea of it. I see you're actually like working out right now, and like you're so clearly you know what I'm talking about, because when you're competing, you stay sharp. You have this energy. It's vibrant. And so I hope I never lose that, brother. I'm proud to say my kids are, very competitive that way as well. And it's just something that's a kind of the DNA of what I do and what I see other successful business owners do as well.
Yeah, I think that normal folks or win losers types of people, they'll just look at someone that's successful and find flaws, and they'll feel attacked by their success. They'll feel insulted by some of the things that they say. That's what I'm observing nowadays, and feel that people that vibe on an abundance level, they'll just look at successful folks, what they do, and not feel threatened by that, but actually inspired to keep climbing the mountain and keep on improving.
Yeah, it is I think it's scarcity and abundance, right? If you're sitting there saying why your competitor sucks, it's like that's really your insecurities coming out, right? Give your competitors love for what they do well. I learned so much from people that are my competitors, quote unquote. I just don't see the need to ever, point out we're better than this, because it's like, okay, great, you're good at this, but that doesn't mean that you have to bash someone else. I think that's something that's a misconception in business. And I've seen businesses do it, but it's really short term, man. Long term, if you're bringing, you're accepting that there's other people that do things better than you and you can learn from them, that's going to help you grow. So I think that's just an abundance mindset.
Tell me about some insights that you had while podcasting.
That's a big question, man. This is my favorite thing that I do on a weekly basis. What insights? I mean, here's what I would say. I have met more amazing individuals through the podcast world than all the masterminds I've done combined. It's wild, brother, because well, you're in Mexico now. I'm in Florida, or I just did one with a gal in Australia not long ago. It's like, so we've shrunk the world. So I think that's one of the insights where you have people, whether they're in Africa or US or Europe, we all have this desire to improve the world. We have this desire to live our best lives. And I think that's what podcasting has done more than anything. It's really shrunk everything down and said, man, I get to connect with Charles in Mexico while I'm here in Florida. And we didn't have that all that long ago. Really, this ability to see one another, connect, talk about things that we're working on. So that's probably the biggest insight that I've received, is just how people around the world are looking to do the same thing. And just because our time zones are all different, or you're 20 hours ahead or whatever it is, you're looking to do the same thing. So I love that about podcasts, and that is my favorite thing, is really connecting with people like yourself.
Right. And one of my thesis nowadays is not necessarily starting the next big technology, starting the next Facebook, but just utilizing the technologies that we have, scaling them and being the best at using them. Zoom, for example, or if you're more fancy, Riverside, using Opus to create some shorts, So just being great at using that technology. Most of them are no code, and piecing them all up together, creating systems, and that way you can really create a solid business for yourself. On the podcasting side, how do you pick your guests and how do you make sure to extract the best knowledge out of them?
Yeah, how I pick the guests, that's a good question. So I pick it based on, do you have something interesting to say? And I know that's really vague, but for instance, we talked about dentistry earlier. One of my most fascinating podcasts ever was a dentist. Now, we put people in these boxes. They're a dentist, therefore they know that. No, man, that's just one little bit of who they are. So I base it based on, have they done something cool and do they want to share it to the world? And I've had professional athletes to, high level business executives to psychologists. I mean, all over the map. Um, And then I'm sorry, the second part of your question, I failed on you.
Yeah,
You asked,
extracting their best knowledge.
yeah. It's a good question that you're asking. I don't go in super prepared because I found the organic conversation is really what brings out the best. So if I bring my interested, like I'm interested in who you are, that's going to extract what I think the audience mainly wants to hear rather than it being like a canned question, same response every single time. And I'll give you an example. I had my best friend of over 30 years on the podcast. I know everything about this guy. I mean, I know his family. He and I are as close as we can get. Guess what? I learned so much about him on a podcast because I'm asking deeper than surface level questions. So it's really just being curious. You know, I think it was said best in what is it? How to Win Friends and Influence People. In order to be interesting, you have to be interested. And so that's really my goal as I go in. And I know you're going to be on the fancy platform with Riverside with me, brother, on the Let's Go Win podcast. And that's what I'm going to bring, man. I'm interested in who Charles is, what is, CEO at Top Leads. And so we're just going to dive into what that means. And then he's into ultra training and Ironmans and all the crazy stuff that you're doing. It's like, that's cool. And why does that drive you? So that's the whole idea. It's just being interested.
Yeah, and that's very good. That's my number one advice for podcasting. It's not like create content out of thin air and try to bring twists to your past stories. Just being interesting, take risks, accomplish something different in your life. You know, like when you're alone in this dark zone and you know that you're probably one of the only one attempting what you're attempting right now, and there's high risks of and high chances of failure, and then you surmount that obstacle, then you have a story. And it's the same when something really negative happens in your life. You had a huge car accident, this humongous business failure. Anytime something like really negative happens, that's a story right there, and you can pivot that into interesting stuff, entertaining stuff, and even money. Now, I want to talk about dentists. My granddad was a dentist. I have a lot of him inside me, very smart and generous man. And I remember some marketing funnels also of my dentist. I had braces, went to the doctor various times. One of my first agencies, we did serve dentists. And I certainly remember that one of my dentists, he came in at the office one day in a brand new Audi R8. And I was like, how the fuck does he make that kind of money? Then I understood later on, like about marketing funnels and so forth. But tell me, as a dentist, how do you get rich nowadays?
Yeah, it's a good question, man. I think ultimately, if you're clear on who you are and what you do, and you actually spend time not just drilling teeth, not just doing crowns, but I'll give you an example. One of my favorite clients is a dentist out of Oklahoma City. He's, I think, 36 or 37, and he's sharp, man. He is so gifted. But what I've told him is, look, that's amazing. And obviously, you're supporting your family doing what you're doing. How do you grow this so that more of your amazing knowledge gets to not just Oklahoma City, but so it is something where, you've heard the saying, work on your business, not always just working in it. And I think that's what these dentists need to look at is you're a leader. How do we grow your leadership? How do we make it even bigger and more vast than what it is? So they're brilliant, they're talented. I will tell you this, Charles, and why I'm interested in dentistry. It has this high suicide rate of any occupation in the country. And that's how I lost my dad just over 2 years ago. And so I was speaking on stage, and my wife was like, "Man, your energy was different, JM. That was something else." And I just fell in love with it, man. So I can double their revenue, right? Or triple their revenue in a year, which is great. But really, I'm more focused on their mental health, mental awareness, making sure that they're taking care of themselves because these are brilliant people, just like you said, your grandfather was. They're doing great work. They're serving, and yet we have this challenge with the mental health side or with depression. So anyway, it's just so much bigger than just making money.
Right. And oral health is super important. A lot of bacterias come in there, and I feel that the field is still in the dark ages when it comes to understanding how much the bacteria that come into your mouth affect your whole body. As a biohacker, the oral health is really, really important. Now, depression and high suicide rate. I was aware of that. Doctors as well. Most of the time, they have quite a hard time. Can we double click on that and explain why the suicide rate is so high? Is it because they're busy, busy, busy all the time? Like, why exactly is the suicide rate so high in dentists?
Yeah, I'm still exploring that, brother. And here's what I would say. Uh, your question prior to this, like how do you grow the business? And often, so I'll just say dentists and a lot of doctors, but they are the CEO, they are the CFO, they are the COO, all wrapped in one. Plus, they're responsible for create. Their barrier of entry is perfection. So if they're working on your teeth, perfect is literally what they need to do in order for you to be happy. Imagine that pressure being on you all the time, where you have to be perfect. And, perfection is the enemy of greatness. It really is. Because at the end of the day, like you said, when I'm going in, I want my teeth to look good, but really I want to be healthy. I want to be happy. I want to be like, that's what I'm looking for. So these guys and gals put so much pressure on themselves continuously. And here's the other thing, brother. You said you're a biohacker, which I'm into as well. So few of these professionals know how to take care of themselves first. Even though a doctor knows, yeah, you shouldn't smoke or you should eat well or you should move their body. If they're going into work at, let's say, 8 a.m. and they're getting off grinding at like 6 p.m., what are they doing for themselves? Did they actually move their body that day? Did they do any meditation or breath work or yoga or some of the things that I find so incredibly important? And the answer resoundingly is no, I don't do that. In fact, I have no routine. So it's one of the first things I work with my clients is like, look, we need to take care of you first so that you can take care of all these other human beings. And that's the basis of my coaching. It has been from day one. And so I think that's a part of it as well, brother, that they just don't, they're so like servant leaders, they forget to take care of themselves first, which is actually the most selfish thing that they can do.
100%. My granddad, yeah, he was addicted to sugar. I would say he was obese by the end of his life and died of diabetes. It was a nice death because he died like eating chocolate or something. But I remember being very, very sad when he passed away. How are you dealing with the death of your father? It has been 2 years. How does one grieve properly?
Well, I don't know if you do grieve properly. I don't know if that's such a thing. I will say the 5 stages of grief are real. Giving yourself some grace and really, and I'm speaking for myself, giving myself grace to say it's okay to not be okay, right? Because I was taught boys don't cry, man, which is terrible advice, by the way, terrible. Um, it's okay to let those emotions out. It's okay to say I'm not okay. Stop asking the question of why, because I'll never know the answer, right? I until my dad and I meet later in heaven or whatever it is, whatever that is in this world, I won't know the answer, and even then I might not know it. So I try to celebrate the time I did have with my dad, and I also learned from the lessons. As you know, as horrible as it is the way he died, amazing things have come from it. And I know that sucks to say that. Even when I say it, sometimes I cringe. But the truth is, brother, I have a perspective on life that you can't really buy. I cherish every single day to a level that I don't know that I did prior, because it's hard for me to understand. Every single day I wake up trying to live my best life, trying to live as long as I can. At some point in his life, he decided he no longer wanted to be here. So it's the polarity is so wild, right? Like I want to live to like 150, man. That's why biohacking is important to me. He was 71, I believe at the time, and yet he was so tired or worn down or whatever it was. I can't be in his head. So that question I don't try to do anymore, because it was his journey ultimately. I wish as a performance and mindset coach that I knew more so I could have maybe done more for him, but I can't think that way because what's happened has happened. And I want to help other people moving forward so that no other family has to deal with it. So it really has become a driver for me, brother, to say, I don't want anybody to feel the way that my mom, my brother, my sister, and I have all felt losing such an amazing man. And lastly, what I will say is that moment doesn't define him. He truly was an incredible, humble, gentle giant, this amazing man. And yet he had a moment where I guess it was just not, worth it any longer. And that sucks, but it drives me to love every day that I'm alive with my kids, with my wife, with my friends, to really embrace the moment.
Right. And I think there's stigma around suicide. Thinks people should have the choice on whether they decide to live or not. That's a conversation for another day, quite a lengthy one. And yeah, like changing one's parent is really hard. I tried doing that, installing a diet on my mom and giving a hits program to my dad. My lessons from that is, yeah, I used to bang my head on the wall a lot and trying to get them to change. And these human beings, they've been there way longer than I have, and changing someone's brain pathways when they have been acting the same for that long is quite hard. One good thing though, I've seen that 5 years later, after I've coached, quote unquote, my parents, I started seeing some change. So yeah, if you're gonna help people change in some direction, be patient at least, but it's quite a hard task, especially in the dynamics of a family. Now, I want to ask you, you mentioned that you do some biohacking stuff. How do you take care of yourself on a daily basis? What's your routine?
Yeah, it's extensive, man. I mean, mine is about 2.5 hours every morning to take care of my body, which I don't coach on, by the way. I know that's probably too. Or I let my left foot touch the ground and I want to run to the restroom when I wake up, I say three things I'm grateful for. That starts my day. Then immediately, after brushing my teeth and whatever, I jump into my breath work. It's probably my favorite thing is that 11 minutes of just to my meditation. 11 minutes typically, most mornings, and then 11 minutes of yoga. And that kind of starts my day off. At that point, I'm either taking care of the dog, the kids, and then at some point I'll come back to my routine, fueling the body, journaling, working out. So it's funny how I used to wake up super early, make sure I got it all in before that. I've kind of learned, like, I'm going to do some of it, then I'm going to go be a dad for a little bit, then I'll come back and finish it off. But the other thing that I cold plunge every day, it's something that I can't believe I didn't cold plunge at some point in my life, because that's how good it feels. So that's kind of a snippet of what I do on a daily.
And do you feel that you need to impose pain on yourself to feel better after? Because that's like cold plunge. It's the same principle with saunas and working out. Do you agree with that philosophy?
It's funny. I know that's the idea, right? You're stressing your body in a healthy way, which is good for it. I don't really, that's not why I do the cold plunge. Maybe that's why I started, right? But here's what I will tell you. With the cold plunge specifically, you get such a dopamine rush. So if you're to compare it to drinking alcohol or, and I've never done this, but cocaine, you get about 9.5 minutes of a dopamine hit if you do those things. When you do a cold plunge, you get 2.5 to 3 hours and you feel it. So it's funny how I hear people all the time. They're like, I can't get and do 3 minutes of cold plunge. Well, if you do it, if you try it one time, the first 30 seconds suck. And I don't care how long you cold plunge. For me, it still sucks. But the next 2.5 to 3 minutes or however long I go, it's euphoric. So it's interesting, similar to working out, right? When you start, sometimes it's like, God, this sucks. But once you get into it, your body chemistry takes over. So I don't know, man. I don't know that I'm looking to kick my own ass to have this amazing feeling, but I love how I feel after cold plunge. I don't sauna enough. That's the one thing. I don't know why. Maybe I just because it's 20 some odd minutes of just sitting there. But that's something I would like to upgrade in my routine is at least three to four times a week. And it's just down the road. Like I walk to my neighborhood little sauna. I should do it. But for whatever reason, brother, that's the one I'm kind of failing on.
Yeah, it can be 10 minutes as well. You just heat it up like way more. And there's like these vapor saunas on Amazon for 250 bucks, and they work pretty well. Or you can buy the fancy wooden infrared sauna. But yeah, saunas are quite painful. Like me, I'm from Canada, and cold is natural for me. I only do cold showers also nowadays, but saunas, it's quite torturous to stay there after a while, after like 10 to 15 minutes and go one more a la Ed Milet. But yeah, interesting stuff you're on. Where can people can find out more about you, JM?
Yeah, brother. Let's Go Win, the Let's Go Win podcast, which you're going to be on. Let's Go Win 365 or JM Ryerson on any social media platform. And yeah, brother, I just appreciate the time and having me on. It's just you're an interesting guy, and I like the work you're doing, brother. So I really appreciate it.